Text 37. Please describe how many dissolutions there are for the elements of material nature, and who survives after the dissolutions to serve the Lord while he is asleep. Purport. In the Brahma Samhita 547-48, it is said that all the material manifestations with innumerable universes appear and disappear with the breathing of Mahavishnu lying in Yoga Nidra or mystic sleep. Govinda, the ultimate and supreme personality of Godhead, Lord Krishna, lies sleeping unlimitedly on the causal ocean in order to create unlimited numbers of universes during that sleep. He lies on the water by his own internal potency, and I worship that original supreme Godhead. Due to his breathing, innumerable universes come into existence, and when he withdraws his breath, there occurs the dissolution of all the lords of the universe. That plenary portion of the Supreme Lord is called Mahavishnu, and he is a part of the part of Lord Krishna. I worship Govinda, the original Lord. After the dissolution of the material manifestations, the Lord and his kingdom beyond the causal ocean do not disappear, nor do the inhabitants, the Lord's associates. The associates of the Lord are far more numerous than the living entities who have forgotten the Lord due to material association. The impersonalist's explanation of the word aham in the 4 verses of the original Bhagavatam, aham evasyam evagre, etc., is refuted here. The Lord and his eternal associates remain after the dissolution. Vidura's inquiry about such persons is a clear indication of the existence of all the paraphernalia of the Lord. This is also confirmed in the Kashiskanda, as quoted by both Jiva Goswami and Srila Vishwanatha Chakravarti, who follow in the footsteps of Srila Sridhara Swami. The devotees of the Lord never annihilate their individual existences, even after the dissolution of the entire cosmic manifestation. The Lord and the devotees who associate with him are always eternal, in both the material and spiritual worlds. Text 38. What are the truths regarding the living entities and the Supreme Personality of Godhead? What are their identities? What are the specific values in the knowledge in the Vedas? And what are the necessities for the spiritual master and his disciples? Purport. The living entities are constitutionally servitors of the Lord, who can accept all kinds of service from everyone. It is clearly declared, Bhagavad Gita 5:29, that the Lord is the supreme enjoyer of the benefits of all sacrifices and penances, the proprietor of all that is manifested, and the friend of all living entities. That is his real identity. Therefore, when the living entity accepts this supreme proprietorship of the Lord and acts in that attitude, he resumes his real identity. In order to elevate the living entity to this standard of knowledge, there is the necessity of spiritual association. The bona fide spiritual master desires that his disciples know the process of rendering transcendental service to the Lord, and the disciples also know that they have to learn about the eternal relationship between God and the living entity from a self-realized soul. To disseminate transcendental knowledge, one must retire from mundane activities on the strength of enlightenment and knowledge in terms of Vedic wisdom. That is the sum and substance of all the questions in this verse. Text 39. Spotless devotees of the Lord have mentioned the source of such knowledge. How could one have knowledge of devotional service and detachment without the help of such devotees? Purport. There are many inexperienced persons who advocate self-realization without the help of a spiritual master. They decry the necessity of the spiritual master and try themselves to take his place by propagating the theory that a spiritual master is not necessary. Srimad Bhagavatam, however, does not approve this viewpoint. Even the great transcendental scholar Vyasadeva had need of a spiritual master, and under the instruction of his spiritual master Narada, he prepared this sublime literature, Srimad Bhagavatam. Even Lord Chaitanya, although he is Krishna himself, accepted a spiritual master. Even Lord Krishna accepted a spiritual master, Sandipani Muni, in order to be enlightened. And all the acharyas and saints of the world had spiritual masters. In Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna accepted Lord Krishna as his spiritual master, although there was no necessity of such a formal declaration. So in all cases, there is no question about the necessity of accepting a spiritual master. The only stipulation is that the spiritual master should be bona fide, i.e. the spiritual master must be in the proper chain of disciplic succession, called the Parampara system. Suris are great scholars, but they may not always be anaga or spotless. The anagasuri is one who is a pure devotee of the Lord. Those who are not pure devotees of the Lord, or want to be on an equal level with him, are not anagasuri. Pure devotees have prepared many books of knowledge on the basis of authorized scriptures. Srila Rupa Goswami and his assistants, under the instructions of Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, have all written various literatures for the guidance of prospective devotees, and anyone who is very serious about raising himself to the standard of a pure devotee of the Lord must take advantage of those literatures. Text 40. My dear sage, I have put all these questions before you with a view to knowing the pastimes of Hari, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. You are the friend of all, so kindly describe them for all those who have lost their vision. Purport. Vidura put forward many varieties of questions with a view to understanding the principles of transcendental loving service to the Lord, as stated in Bhagavad Gita 2:41. Devotional service to the Lord is one, and the mind of the devotee is not diverted to the many branches of uncertainties. Vidura's purpose was to be situated in that service to the Lord, wherein one merges undivertedly. He claimed the friendship of Maitreya Muni, not because he was Maitreya's son, but because Maitreya was actually the friend of all who have lost their spiritual vision due to material influence. Text 41. O spotless one, your answers to all these questions will grant immunity from all material miseries. Such charity is greater than all Vedic charities, sacrifices, penances, etc. Purport. The highest perfectional work of charity is to give people in general immunity from the anxieties of material existence. This can be done only by performing activities in devotional service to the Lord. Such knowledge is incomparable. Cultivation of the knowledge in the Vedas, performance of sacrifice, and distribution of munificent charities altogether cannot form even a part of the immunity from the pangs of material existence that is gained from devotional service. The charity of Maitreya not only will help Vidura, but due to its universal nature will deliver all others in all times. Thus Maitreya is immortal. Text 42. Sri Sukadeva Goswami said, Thus the chief of the sages, who was always enthusiastic about describing topics regarding the personality of Godhead, began to narrate the descriptive explanation of the Puranas. Being so infused by Vidura, he was very much enlivened by speaking on the transcendental activities of the Lord. Purport. Great learned sages like Maitreya Muni are always very enthusiastic about describing the transcendental activities of the Lord. Maitreya Muni, being thus invited by Vidura to speak, appeared to be smiling because he actually felt transcendental bliss. Thus end the Bhaktivedanta Purports of the 3rd Canto 7th chapter of the Srimad Bhagavatam, entitled Further Inquiries by Vidura. Chapter 8. Manifestation of Brahma from Garbhodakasai Vishnu. Text 1. The great sage Maitreya Muni said to Vidura, The royal dynasty of King Puru is worthy to serve the pure devotees, because all the descendants of that family are devoted to the personality of Godhead. You are also born in that family, and it is wonderful that because of your attempt, the transcendental pastimes of the Lord are becoming newer and newer at every moment. Purport. The great sage Maitreya thanked Vidura and praised him by reference to his family glories. The Puru dynasty was full of devotees of the personality of Godhead, and was therefore glorious. Because they were not attached to impersonal Brahman, or the localized Paramatma, but were directly attached to Bhagavan, the personality of Godhead, they were worthy to render service to the Lord and his pure devotees. Because Vidura was one of the descendants of that family, naturally he engaged in spreading wide the ever-new glories of the Lord. Maitreya felt happy to have such glorious company as Vidura. He considered the company of Vidura most desirable, because such association can accelerate one's dormant propensities for devotional service. Text 2. Let me now begin speaking on the Bhagavata Purana, which was directly spoken to the great sages by the personality of Godhead, for the benefit of those who are entangled in extreme miseries, for the sake of very little pleasure. Purport. The sage Maitreya proposed to speak on Srimad Bhagavatam because it was especially compiled and traditionally comes down in the disciplic succession for the solution of all the problems of human society. Only one who is fortunate can have the opportunity to hear Srimad Bhagavatam in the association of pure devotees of the Lord. Under the spell of material energy, the living entities are entrapped in the bondage of many difficulties simply for the sake of a little bit of material happiness. They engage in fruitive activities, not knowing the implications. Under the false impression that the body is the self, the living entities foolishly relate to so many false attachments. They think that they can engage with materialistic paraphernalia forever. This gross misconception of life is so strong that a person suffers continually, life after life, under the external energy of the Lord. If one comes in contact with the book Bhagavatam as well as with the devotee Bhagavata, who knows what the Bhagavatam is, then such a fortunate man gets out of the material entanglement. Therefore, Sri Maitreya Muni, out of compassion for the suffering men in the world, proposes to speak on the Srimad Bhagavatam, first and last. Text 3. Some time ago, being inquisitive to know, Sanat Kumara, the chief of the boy saints, accompanied by the other great sages, inquired exactly, like you, about the truths regarding Vasudeva, the Supreme, from Lord Shankarshana, who is seated at the bottom of the universe. Purport. This is in clarification of the statement that the Lord spoke directly on the Srimad Bhagavatam. When and unto whom the Bhagavatam was spoken is explained herewith. Questions similar to those put forward by Vidura were asked by great sages like Sanat Kumara, and Lord Shankarshana, the plenary expansion of the Supreme Lord Vasudeva, answered them. Text 4. At that time, Lord Shankarshana was meditating upon his Supreme Lord, whom the learned esteem as Lord Vasudeva, but for the sake of the advancement of the great learned sages, he slightly opened his lotus-like eyes and began to speak. Text 5. The sages came from the highest planets down to the lower region through the water of the Ganges, and therefore the hair on their heads was wet. They touched the lotus feet of the Lord, which are worshipped with various paraphernalia by the daughters of the Serpent King, when they desire good husbands. Purport. The Ganges water flows directly from the lotus feet of Vishnu, and its course runs from the highest planet of the universe down to the lowest. The sages came down from Satyaloka by taking advantage of the flowing water, a process of transportation made possible by the power of mystic yoga. If a river flows thousands and thousands of miles, a perfect yogi can at once transform himself from one place to another, simply by dipping in its water. The Ganges is the only celestial river which flows throughout the universe, and great sages travel all over the universe via this sacred river. The statement that their hair was wet indicates that it was directly moistened by the water originating from the lotus feet of Vishnu, the Ganges. Whoever touches the water of the Ganges to his head surely touches the lotus feet of the Lord directly, and can become free from all effects of sinful acts. If after taking a bath in the Ganges, or being washed of all sins, a man guards himself against committing further sinful acts, then certainly he is delivered. But if he again takes up sinful activities, his bath in the Ganges is as good as that of the elephant, who nicely takes his bath in a river, but later spoils the whole thing by covering himself with dust on the land. Text 6. The four Kumaras, headed by Sanat Kumara, who all knew the transcendental pastimes of the Lord, glorified the Lord in rhythmic accents with selected words full of affection and love. At that time, Lord Shankarshana, with his thousands of raised hoods, began to radiate an effulgence from the glowing stones on his head. Purport. The Lord is sometimes addressed as Uttamasloka, which means one who is worshipped with selected words by devotees. A profusion of such selected words comes from a devotee who is fully absorbed in affection and love for the devotional service of the Lord. There are many instances in which even a small boy who was a great devotee of the Lord could offer excellent prayers in the choicest words for glorification of the pastimes of the Lord. In other words, without the development of fine affection and love, one cannot offer prayers to the Lord very suitably. Text 7. Lord Shankarshana thus spoke the purport of Srimad Bhagavatam to the great sage Sanat Kumara, who had already taken the vow of renunciation. Sanat Kumara also, in his turn, when inquired of by Shankyayana Muni, explained Srimad Bhagavatam as he had heard it from Shankarshana. Purport. This is the way of the Parampara system. Although Sanat Kumara, the well-known great saintly Kumara, was in the perfect stage of life, still he heard the message of Srimad Bhagavatam from Lord Shankarsana. Similarly, when he was questioned by Shankyayana Rishi, he spoke to him the same message he had heard from Lord Shankarsana. In other words, unless one hears from the proper authority, one cannot become a preacher. In devotional service, therefore, 2 items out of the 9, namely hearing and chanting, are most important. Without hearing nicely, one cannot preach the message of Vedic knowledge. Text 8. The great sage Shankyayana was the chief amongst the transcendentalists, and when he was describing the glories of the Lord in terms of Srimad Bhagavatam, it so happened that my spiritual master Parashara and Brihaspati both heard him. Text 9. The great sage Parashara, as aforementioned, being so advised by the great sage Pulyastya, spoke unto me the foremost of the Puranas, Bhagavatam. I shall also describe this before you, my dear son, in terms of my hearing, because you are always my faithful follower. Purport. The great sage of the name Pulastya is the father of all demoniac descendants. Once upon a time, Parashara became a sacrifice in which all the demons were to be burnt to death because his father had been killed and devoured by one of them. The great sage, Vasistha Muni, arrived at the sacrifice and requested Parashara to stop the deadly action, and because of Vasistha's position and respect in the community of sages, Parashara could not deny the request. Parashara having stopped the sacrifice, Pulastya, the father of the demons, appreciated his Brahminical temperament and gave the blessing that in the future he would be a great speaker on the Vedic literatures called the Puranas, the supplements of the Vedas. Parashara's action was appreciated by Pulastya because Parashara had forgiven the demons out of his Brahminical power of forgiveness. Parashara was able to demolish all the demons in the sacrifice, but he considered demons are so made that they devour living creatures, men and animals. But why on that account should I withdraw my Brahminical qualification of forgiveness? As the great speaker of the Puranas, Parashara first of all spoke on the Srimad Bhagavata Purana, because it is the foremost of all the Puranas. Maitreya Muni desired to narrate the same Bhagavatam he had heard from Parashara, and Vidura was qualified to hear it because of his faithfulness and his following the instructions received from superiors. So Srimad Bhagavatam was being narrated from time immemorial by the disciplic succession, even before the time of Vyasadeva. The so-called historians calculate the Puranas to be only a few hundred years old, but factually the Puranas existed from time immemorial, before all historical calculations by the mundaners and speculative philosophers. Text 10. At that time, when the 3 worlds were submerged in water, Garbhodakasaya Vishnu was one, lying on his bedstead, the great snake Ananta, and although he appeared to be in slumber in his own internal potency, free from the action of the external energy, his eyes were not completely closed. Purport. The Lord is eternally enjoying transcendental bliss by his internal potency, whereas the external potency is suspended during the time of the dissolution of the cosmic manifestation. Text 11. Just like the strength of fire within fuel wood, the Lord remained within the water of dissolution, submerging all the living entities in their subtle bodies. He lay in the self-invigorated energy called Kala. Purport. After the 3 worlds, the upper, lower, and middle planetary systems merged into the water of dissolution. The living entities of all the 3 worlds remained in their subtle bodies by dint of the energy called Kala. In this dissolution, the gross bodies became unmanifest, but the subtle bodies existed, just like the water of the material creation. Thus, the material energy was not completely wound up, as is the case in the full dissolution of the material world. Text 12. The Lord lay down for 4,000 yuga cycles in his internal potency, and by his external energy he appeared to be sleeping within the water. When the living entities were coming out for further development of their fruitive activities, actuated by the energy called Kala Shakti, he saw his transcendental body as bluish. Purport. In the Vishnu Purana, Kala Shakti is mentioned as avidya. The symptom of the influence of the Kala Shakti is that one has to work in the material world for fruitive results. The fruitive workers are described in Bhagavad Gita as muddas or foolish. Such foolish living entities are very enthusiastic to work for some temporary benefit within perpetual bondage. One thinks himself very clever throughout his life if he is able to leave behind him a great asset of wealth for his children, and to achieve this temporary benefit benefit, he takes the risk of all sinful activities, without knowledge that such activities will keep him perpetually bound by the shackles of material bondage. Due to this polluted mentality, and due to material sins, the aggregate combination of living entities appeared to be bluish. Such an impetus of activity for fruit of result is made possible by the dictation of the external energy of the Lord Kala. Text 13. The subtle subject matter of creation, on which the Lord's attention was fixed, was agitated by the material mode of passion, and thus the subtle form of creation pierced through his abdomen. Text 14. Piercing through, this sum total form of the fruit of activity of the living entities took the shape of the bud of a lotus flower generated from the personality of Vishnu, and by his supreme will it illuminated everything, like the sun, and dried up the vast waters of devastation. Text 15. Into that universal lotus flower Lord Vishnu personally entered as the Supersoul, and when it was thus impregnated with all the modes of material nature, the personality of Vedic wisdom, whom we call the Self-Born, was generated. Purport. This lotus flower is the universal Virat form, or the gigantic form of the Lord in the material world. It becomes amalgamated in the personality of Godhead Vishnu in his abdomen at the time of dissolution, and it becomes manifest at the time of creation. This is due to Garbhodakasaya Vishnu, who enters into each of the universes. In this form is the sum total of all the fruit of activities of the living entities conditioned by material nature, and the first of them, namely Brahma, or the controller of the universe, is generated from this lotus flower. This firstborn living being, unlike all the others, has no material father, and thus he is called self-born or Svayambhu. He goes to sleep with Narayana at the time of devastation, and when there is another creation he is born in this way. From this description we have the conception of three: the gross Virat form, the subtle Hiranyagarbha, and the material creative force Brahma. Text 16. Brahma, born out of the lotus flower, could not see the world, although he was situated in the whorl. He therefore circumambulated all of space, and while moving his eyes in all directions, he achieved 4 heads in terms of the 4 directions. Text 17. Lord Brahma, situated in that lotus, could not perfectly understand the creation, the lotus, or himself. At the end of the millennium, the air of devastation began to move the water and the lotus in great circular waves. Purport. Lord Brahma was perplexed about his creation, the lotus and the world, even though he tried to understand them for 1 millennium, which is beyond calculation in the solar years of human beings. No one, therefore, can know the mystery of the creation and cosmic manifestation simply by mental speculation. The human being is so limited in his capacity that, without the help of the Supreme, he can hardly understand the mystery of the will of the Lord in terms of creation, continuance, and destruction. Text 18. Lord Brahma, in his ignorance, contemplated, "Who am I that am situated on the top of this lotus? Wherefrom has it sprouted? There must be something downwards, and that from which this lotus has grown must be within the water." Purport. The subject matter of the speculations of Brahma in the beginning regarding the creation of the cosmic manifestation is still a subject matter for mental speculators. The most intelligent man is he who tries to find the cause of his personal existence and that of the whole cosmic creation, and thus tries to find the ultimate cause. If his attempt is properly executed with penances and perseverance, it is sure to be crowned with success. Text 19. Lord Brahma, thus contemplating, entered the water through the channel of the stem of the lotus, but in spite of entering the stem and going nearer to the navel of Vishnu, he could not trace out the root. Purport. By dint of one's personal endeavor, one may go nearer to the Lord, but without the Lord's mercy one cannot reach the ultimate point. Such understanding of the Lord is possible only by devotional service, as confirmed in Bhagavad Gita 18:55. Bhaktyamam abhijnate yavanyas chasmi tattvata. Text 20. O Vidura, while searching in that way about his existence, Brahma reached his ultimate time, which is the eternal wheel in the hand of Vishnu, and which generates fear in the mind of the living entity like the fear of death. Text 21. Thereafter, being unable to achieve the desired destination, he retired from such searching and came back again to the top of the lotus. Thus, controlling all objectives, he concentrated his mind on the Supreme Lord. Purport: Samadhi involves concentrating the mind upon the supreme cause of all, even if one is unaware of whether his actual nature is personal, impersonal, or localized. Concentration of the mind on the Supreme is certainly a form of devotional service. To cease from personal sense endeavors and to concentrate on the Supreme Cause is a sign of self-surrender, and when self-surrender is present, that is a sure sign of devotional service. Each and every living entity needs to engage in devotional service to the Lord if he wishes to understand the ultimate cause of his existence. Text 22. At the end of Brahma's 100 years, when his meditation was complete, he developed the required knowledge, and as a result he could see in his heart the Supreme within himself, whom he could not see before with the greatest endeavor. Purport: The Supreme Lord can be experienced only through the process of devotional service and not by one's personal endeavor and mental speculation. The age of Brahma is calculated in terms of Divya years, which are distinct from the solar years of human beings. The Divya years are calculated in Bhagavad Gita 8:17, Sahasra Yuga Paryantam Aharyad Brahmano Vidu. Brahma's one day is equal to 1,000 times the aggregate of the 4 yugas, calculated to be 4,300,000 years. On that basis, Brahma meditated for 100 years before he could understand the supreme cause of all causes, and then he wrote the Brahma Samhita, which is approved and recognized by Lord Chaitanya, and in which he sings, Govindam Adipurusham Tam Aham Bhajami. One has to wait for the mercy of the Lord before one can either render service unto him or know him as he is. Text 23. Brahma could see that on the water there is a gigantic lotus-like white bedstead, the body of Sesanaga, on which the personality of Godhead was lying alone. The whole atmosphere was illuminated by the rays of the jewels bedecking the hood of Sesanaga, and that illumination dissipated all the darkness of those regions. Text 24. The luster of the transcendental body of the Lord mocked the beauty of the coral mountain. The coral mountain is very beautifully dressed by the evening sky, but the yellow dress of the Lord mocked its beauty. There is gold on the summit of the mountain, but the Lord's helmet, bedecked with jewels, mocked it. The mountain's waterfalls, herbs, etc., with a panorama of flowers, seem like garlands, but the Lord's gigantic body and his hands and legs, decorated with jewels, pearls, tulasi leaves, and flower garlands, mocked the scene on the mountain. Purport: The panoramic beauty of nature, which strikes one with wonder, may be taken as a perverted reflection of the transcendental body of the Lord. One who is therefore attracted by the beauty of the Lord is no longer attracted by the beauty of material nature, although he does not minimize its beauty. In Bhagavad Gita 2:59, it is described that one who is attracted by Param, the Supreme, is no longer attracted by anything inferior. Text 25. His transcendental body, unlimited in length and breadth, occupied the 3 planetary systems, upper, middle, and lower. His body was self-illuminated by unparalleled dress and variegatedness, and was properly ornamented. Purport: The length and breadth of the transcendental body of the Supreme Personality of Godhead could only be measured by his own measurement, because he is all-pervading throughout the complete cosmic manifestation. The beauty of material nature is due to his personal beauty, yet he is always magnificently dressed and ornamented to prove his transcendental variegatedness, which is so important in the advancement of spiritual knowledge. Text 26. The Lord showed his lotus feet by raising them. His lotus feet are the source of all awards achieved by devotional service, free from material contamination. Such awards are for those who worship him in pure devotion. The splendor of the transcendental rays from his moon-like toenails and fingernails appeared like the petals of a flower. Purport: The Lord fulfills the desires of everyone just as one desires. Pure devotees are interested in achieving the transcendental service of the Lord, which is non-different from him. Therefore, the Lord is the only desire of the pure devotees, and devotional service is the only spotless process for achieving his favor. Srila Rupa Goswami says in his Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu 1.1.11 that pure devotional service is jnana karmadi anavritam. Pure devotional service is without any tinge of speculative knowledge and fruitive activities, such devotional service is able to award the pure devotee the highest result, namely direct association with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Krishna. According to the Gopala Tapani Upanishad, the Lord showed one of the many thousands of petals of his lotus feet. It is said, Brahmanoshav anavratam me dhyata stuta paradante so buddhyata gopa veso me parastat avirbhabhava. After penetrating for millions of years, Lord Brahma could understand the transcendental form of the Lord as Sri Krishna in the dress of a cowherd boy, and thus he recorded his experience in the Brahma Samhita in the famous prayer, Govindam Adipurusham Tam Aham Bhajami. Text 27. He also acknowledged the service of the devotees and vanquished their distress by his beautiful smile. The reflection of his face, decorated with earrings, was so pleasing because it dazzled with the rays from his lips and the beauty of his nose and eyebrows. Purport. Devotional service to the Lord is very much obliging to him. There are many transcendentalists in different fields of spiritual activities, but devotional service to the Lord is unique. Devotees do not ask anything from the Lord in exchange for their service. Even the most desirable liberation is refused by devotees, although offered by the Lord. Thus the Lord becomes a kind of debtor to the devotees, and he can only try to repay the devotees' service with his ever-enchanting smile. The devotees are ever satisfied by the smiling face of the Lord, and they become enlivened. And by seeing the devotees so enlivened, the Lord himself is further satisfied. So there is continuous transcendental competition between the Lord and his devotees by such reciprocation of service and acknowledgement. Text 28. O my dear Vidura, the Lord's waist was covered with yellow cloth resembling the saffron dust of the kadamba flower, and it was encircled by a well-decorated belt. His chest was decorated with the Srivatsa marking and a necklace of unlimited value. Text 29. As a sandalwood tree is decorated with fragrant flowers and branches, the Lord's body was decorated with valuable jewels and pearls. He was the self-situated tree, the Lord of all others in the universe, and as a sandalwood tree is covered with many snakes, so the Lord's body was also covered by the hoods of Ananta. Purport. The word avyaktamulam is significant here. Generally, no one can see the roots of a tree, but as far as the Lord is concerned, he is the root of himself, because there is no other separate cause of his standing but he himself. In the Vedas, it is said that the Lord is spasrayasraya. He is his own support, and there is no other support for him. Therefore, avyakta means the Supreme Lord himself and no one else. Text 30. Like a great mountain, the Lord stands as the abode for all moving and non-moving living entities. He is the friend of the snakes because Lord Ananta is his friend. As a mountain has thousands of golden peaks, so the Lord was seen with the thousands of golden helmeted hoods of Anantanaga. And as a mountain is sometimes filled with jewels, so also his transcendental body was fully decorated with valuable jewels. As a mountain is sometimes submerged in the ocean water, so the Lord is sometimes submerged in the water of devastation. Text 31. Lord Brahma, thus looking upon the Lord in the shape of a mountain, concluded that he was Hari, the personality of Godhead. He saw that the garland of flowers on his chest glorified him with Vedic wisdom in sweet songs and looked very beautiful. He was protected by the Sudarsana wheel for fighting, and even the sun, moon, air, fire, etc. could not have access to him. Text 32. When Lord Brahma, the maker of the universal destination, thus saw the Lord, he simultaneously glanced over creation. Lord Brahma saw the lake in Lord Vishnu's navel, and the lotus flower, as well as the devastating water, the drying air, and the sky, all became visible to him. Text 33. Lord Brahma, thus being surcharged with the motive passion, became inclined to create, and after seeing the 5 causes of creation indicated by the personality of Godhead, he began to offer his respectful prayers on the path of the creative mentality. Purport. Even if one is in the material mode of passion to create something in the world, he has to take shelter of the Supreme for the necessary energy. That is the path of the successful termination of any attempt. Thus end the Bhaktivedanta Purports of the 3rd Canto, 8th chapter of the Srimad Bhagavatam, entitled Manifestation of Brahma from Garbhodakashayi Vishnu. Chapter 9. Brahma's Prayers for Creative Energy. Lord Brahma said, "O my Lord, today, after many, many years of penance, I have come to know about you. Oh, how unfortunate the embodied living entities are that they are unable to know your personality. My Lord, you are the only knowable object, because there is nothing supreme beyond you. If there is anything supposedly superior to you, it is not the Absolute. You exist as the Supreme by exhibiting the creative energy of matter." Purport. The highest peak of the ignorance of the living entities who are conditioned by material bodies is that they are unaware of the supreme cause of the cosmic manifestation. Different people have different theories regarding the supreme cause, but none of them are genuine. The only supreme cause is Vishnu, and the intervening impediment is the illusory energy of the Lord. The Lord has employed his wonderful material energy in manifesting many, many wonderful distractions in the material world, and the conditioned souls, illusioned by the same energy, are thus unable to know the supreme cause. The most stalwart scientists and philosophers, therefore, cannot be accepted as wonderful. They only appear wonderful because they are instruments in the hands of the illusory energy of the Lord. Under illusion, the general mass of the people deny the existence of the Supreme Lord and accept the foolish products of illusory energy as supreme. One can know the supreme cause, the personality of Godhead, by the causeless mercy of the Lord, which is bestowed upon the Lord's pure devotees like Brahma and those in his disciplic succession. By acts of penance only was Lord Brahma able to see the Garbhodakashayi Vishnu, and by realization only could he understand the Lord as he is. Brahma was extremely satisfied upon observing the magnificent beauty and opulence of the Lord, and he admitted that nothing can be comparable to him. Only by penance can one appreciate the beauty and opulence of the Lord, and when one is acquainted with that beauty and opulence, he is no longer attracted by any other. This is confirmed in Bhagavad Gita 2:59, Param durstva nivartate. Foolish human beings who do not endeavor to investigate the supreme beauty and opulence of the Lord are here condemned by Brahma. It is imperative that every human being try for such knowledge, and if anyone does not do so, his life is spoiled. Anything that is beautiful and opulent in the material sense is enjoyed by those living entities who are like crows. Crows always engage in picking at rejected garbage, whereas the white ducks do not mix with the crows. Rather, they take pleasure in transparent lakes with lotus flowers, surrounded by beautiful orchards. Both crows and ducks are undoubtedly birds by birth, but they are not of the same feather. Text 2. The form which I see is eternally freed from material contamination and has advented to show mercy to the devotees as a manifestation of internal potency. This incarnation is the origin of many other incarnations, and I am born from the lotus flower grown from your navel home. Purport. The three deities, Brahma, Vishnu, and Maheshvara, Shiva, the executive heads of the three modes of material nature, passion, goodness, and ignorance, are all generated from Garbhodakashayi Vishnu, who is described herein by Brahma. From the Ksirodakashayi Vishnu, many Vishnu incarnations expand at different ages in the duration of the cosmic manifestation. They are expanded only for the transcendental happiness of the pure devotees. The incarnations of Vishnu, who appear at different ages and times, are never to be compared to the conditioned souls. The Vishnu Tattvas are not to be compared to deities like Brahma and Shiva, nor are they on the same level. Anyone who compares them is called apasandi or infidel. Tamasha, mentioned herein, is the material nature, and the spiritual nature has a completely separate existence from Tama. Therefore, spiritual nature is called avabodha rasa or avarodha rasa. Avarodha means that which completely nullifies. In the transcendence, there is no chance of material contact by any means. Brahma is the first living being, and therefore he mentions his birth from the lotus flower generated from the abdomen of Garbhodakashayi Vishnu. Text 3. O my Lord, I do not see a form superior to your present form of eternal bliss and knowledge. In your impersonal Brahman effulgence in the spiritual sky, there is no occasional change and no deterioration of internal potency. I surrender unto you because whereas I am proud of my material body and senses, your lordship is the cause of the cosmic manifestation, and yet you are untouched by matter. Purport. As stated in Bhagavad Gita 18:55, Bhaktyamam Abhijanate yavanyas chasme tattvata. The Supreme Personality of Godhead can only be partially known, and only by the process of devotional service to the Lord. Lord Brahma became aware that the Supreme Lord Krishna has many, many eternal blissful forms of knowledge. He has described such expansions of the Supreme Lord, Govinda, in his Brahma Samhita 533 as follows. I worship Govinda, the primeval Lord, who is non-dual and infallible. He is the original cause of all causes, even though he expands in many, many forms. Although he is the oldest personality, he is ever youthful, unaffected by old age. The Supreme Personality of Godhead cannot be known by the academic wisdom of the Vedas. One has to approach the devotee of the Lord to understand him. The only way to understand the Lord as he is by devotional service to the Lord, or by approaching the devotee of the Lord who always has the Lord in his heart. By devotional perfection, one can understand that the impersonal Brahma Jyoti is only a partial representation of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Krishna, and that the three Purusha expansions in the material creation are his plenary portions. In the spiritual sky of the Brahma Jyoti, there is no change of various kalpas or millenniums, and there are no creative activities in the Vaikuntha worlds. The influence of time is conspicuous by its absence. The rays of the transcendental body of the Lord, the unlimited Brahma Jyoti, are undeterred by the influence of material energy. In the material world also, the initial creator is the Lord himself. He brings about the creation of Brahma, who becomes the subsequent creator, empowered by the Lord. Text 4. This present form, or any transcendental form expanded by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, is equally auspicious for all the universes. Since you have manifested this eternal personal form upon whom your devotees meditate, I therefore offer my respectful obeisances unto you. Those who are destined to be dispatched to the path of hell neglect your personal form because of speculating on material topics. Purport. Regarding the personal and impersonal features of the Supreme Absolute Truth, the personal forms exhibited by the Lord in his different plenary expansions are all for the benediction of all the universes. The personal form of the Lord is also worshipped in meditation as Supersoul, Paramatma, but the impersonal Brahma Jyoti is not worshipped. Persons who are addicted to the impersonal feature of the Lord, whether in meditation or otherwise, are all pilgrims to hell, because, as stated in Bhagavad Gita 12.5, impersonalists simply waste their time in mundane mental speculation because they are addicted more to false arguments than to reality. Therefore, the association of the impersonalist is condemned herewith by Brahma. All the plenary expansions of the personality of Godhead are equally potent, as confirmed in the Brahma Samhita 546. Departure eva hi dasantaram abhyupetya dipayate vivrita hetu sammana dharma yastadrig eva hi cha vishnutaya vibhati govindam adipurusham tam aham bhajami. The Lord expands himself as the flames of a fire expand one after another. Although the original flame, or Sri Krishna, is accepted as Govinda, the Supreme Person, all other expansions such as Ram, Narasimha, and Varaha are as potent as the original Lord. All such expanded forms are transcendental. In the beginning of Srimad Bhagavatam, it is made clear that the Supreme Truth is eternally uncontaminated by material touch. There is no jugglery of words and activities in the transcendental kingdom of the Lord. All the Lord's forms are transcendental, and such manifestations are ever identical. The particular form of the Lord exhibited to a devotee is not mundane, even though the devotee may retain material desire, nor is it manifest under the influence of material energy, as is foolishly considered by the impersonalists. Impersonalists who consider the transcendental forms of the Lord to be products of the material world are surely destined for hell. Text 5. O my Lord, persons who smell the aroma of your lotus feet, carried by the air of Vedic sound through the holes of the ears, accept your devotional service. For them you are never separated from the lotus of their hearts. Purport. For the pure devotee of the Lord, there is nothing beyond the lotus feet of the Lord, and the Lord knows that such devotees do not wish anything more than that. The word too especially establishes this fact. The Lord also does not wish to be separated from the lotus hearts of those pure devotees. That is the transcendental relationship between the pure devotees and the personality of Godhead. Because the Lord does not wish to separate himself from the hearts of such pure devotees, it is understood that they are specifically dearer than the impersonalists. The The relationship of the pure devotees with the Lord develops because of devotional service to the Lord on the authentic basis of Vedic authority. Such pure devotees are not mundane sentimentalists, but are factually realists because their activities are supported by the Vedic authorities who have given oral reception to the facts mentioned in the Vedic literatures. The word paraya is very significant. Parabhakti, or spontaneous love of God, is the basis of an intimate relationship with the Lord. This highest stage of relationship with the Lord can be attained simply by hearing about Him, His name, form, quality, etc., from authentic sources like Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam, recited by pure unalloyed devotees of the Lord. Text 6. O my Lord, the people of the world are embarrassed by all material anxieties. They are always afraid. They always try to protect wealth, body, and friends. They are filled with lamentation and unlawful desires and paraphernalia, and they avariciously base their undertakings on the perishable conceptions of my and mine. As long as they do not take shelter of your safe lotus feet, they are full of such anxieties. Purport. One may question how one can always think of the Lord in regard to His name, fame, quality, etc. if one is embarrassed by thoughts of family affairs. Everyone in the material world is full of thoughts about how to maintain his family, how to protect his wealth, how to keep pace with friends and relatives, etc. Thus he is always in fear and lamentation, trying to keep up with the status quo. In answer to his question, this verse spoken by Brahma is very appropriate. A pure devotee of the Lord never thinks of himself as the proprietor of his home. He surrenders everything under the supreme control of the Lord, and thus he has no fear for maintaining his family or protecting the interests of his family. Because of this surrender, he no longer has any attraction for wealth. Even if there is attraction for wealth, it is not for sense enjoyment, but for the service of the Lord. A pure devotee may be attracted to accumulating wealth just like an ordinary man, but the difference is that a devotee acquires money for the service of the Lord, whereas the ordinary man acquires money for his sense enjoyment. Thus the acquisition of wealth by a devotee is not a source of anxieties, as is the case for a worldly man. And because a pure devotee accepts everything in the sense of serving the Lord, the poisonous teeth of accumulation of wealth are extracted. If a snake has its poison removed and bites a man, there is no fatal effect. Similarly, wealth accumulated in the cause of the Lord has no poisonous teeth, and the effect is not fatal. A pure devotee is never entangled in material worldly affairs, even though he may remain in the world like an ordinary man. Text 7. O my Lord, persons who are bereft of the all-auspicious performance of chanting and hearing about your transcendental activities are certainly unfortunate and are also bereft of good sense. They engage in inauspicious activities, enjoying sense gratification for a very little while. Purport. The next question is why people are against such auspicious activities as chanting and hearing the glories and pastimes of the Lord, which can bring total freedom from the cares and anxieties of material existence. The only answer to this question is that they are unfortunate because of supernatural control due to their offensive activities performed simply for the sake of sense gratification. The Lord's pure devotees, however, take compassion upon such unfortunate persons and, in a missionary spirit, try to persuade them into the line of devotional service. Only by the grace of pure devotees can such unfortunate men be elevated to the position of transcendental service. Text 8. O great actor, my Lord, all these poor creatures are constantly perplexed by hunger, thirst, severe cold, secretion, and bile, attacked by coughing winter, blasting summer, rains, and many other disturbing elements, and overwhelmed by strong sex urges and indefatigable anger. I take pity on them, and I am very much aggrieved for them. Purport. A pure devotee of the Lord like Brahma and persons in his disciplic succession are always unhappy to see the perplexities of the conditioned souls who are suffering the onslaughts of the threefold miseries which pertain to the body and mind, to the disturbances of material nature, and to many other such material disadvantages. Not knowing adequate measures for relieving such difficulties, suffering persons sometimes pose themselves as leaders of the people, and the unfortunate followers are put into further disadvantages under such so-called leadership. This is like a blind man's leading another blind man to fall into a ditch. Therefore, unless the devotees of the Lord take pity on them and teach them the right path, their lives are hopeless failures. The devotees of the Lord who voluntarily take the responsibility of raising the foolish materialistic sense enjoyers are as confidential to the Lord as Lord Brahma. Text 9. O my Lord, the material miseries are without factual existence for the soul. Yet as long as the conditioned soul sees the body as meant for sense enjoyment, he cannot get out of the entanglement of material miseries, being influenced by your external energy. Purport. The whole trouble of the living entity in material existence is that he has an independent conception of life. He is always dependent on the rules of the Supreme Lord, in both the conditioned and liberated states. But by the influence of the external energy, the conditioned soul thinks himself independent of the supremacy of the personality of Godhead. His constitutional position is to dovetail himself with the desire of the Supreme Will, but as long as he does not do so, he is sure to drag on in the shackles of material bondage. As stated in Bhagavad Gita 255, Prajahati yada kaman sharvan partha manogatan. He has to give up all sorts of plans manufactured by mental concoction. The living entity has to dovetail himself with the Supreme Will. That will help him to get out of the entanglement of material existence. Text 10. Such non-devotees engage their senses in very troublesome and extensive work, and they suffer insomnia at night because their intelligence constantly breaks their sleep with various mental speculations. They are frustrated in all their various plans by supernatural power. Even great sages, if they are against your transcendental topics, must rotate in this material world. Purport. As described in the previous verse, people who have no taste for the devotional service of the Lord are occupied in material engagements. Most of them engage during the daytime in hard physical labor. Their senses are engaged very extensively in troublesome duties in the gigantic plants of heavy industrial enterprise. The owners of such factories are engaged in finding a market for their industrial products, and the laborers are engaged in extensive production involving huge mechanical arrangements. Factory is another name for hell. At night, hellishly engaged persons take advantage of wine and women to satisfy their tired senses, but they are not even able to have sound sleep because their various mental speculative plans constantly interrupt their sleep. Because they suffer from insomnia, sometimes they feel sleepy in the morning for lack of sufficient rest. By the arrangement of supernatural power, even the great scientists and thinkers of the world suffer frustration of their various plans, and thus rot in the material world, birth after birth. A great scientist may make discoveries in atomic energy for the quick destruction of the world, and may be awarded the best prize in recognition of this service, or disservice, but he also has to undergo the reactions of his work by rotating in the cycle of repeated births and deaths under the superhuman law of material nature. All these people who are against the principle of devotional service are destined to rotate in this material world without fail. This verse particularly mentions that even sages who are averse to the principles of devotional service to the Lord are also condemned to undergo the terms of material existence. Not only in this age, but formerly also, there were many sages who tried to invent their own systems of religion without reference to devotional service to the Supreme Lord. But there cannot be any religious principle without devotional service to the Lord. The Supreme Lord is the leader of the entire range of living entities, and no one can be equal to or greater than him. Even the Lord's impersonal feature and all-pervading localized feature cannot be on an equal level with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Therefore, there cannot be any religion or system of genuine philosophy for the advancement of the living entities without the principle of devotional service. The impersonalists who take much trouble in penance and austerity for self-liberation may approach the impersonal Brahmajyoti, but ultimately, because of not being situated in devotional service, they glide down again to the material world to undergo another term of material existence. This is confirmed as follows. Persons who are falsely under the impression of being liberated without devotional service to the Lord may reach the goal of the Brahmajyoti, but because of their impure consciousness and for want of shelter in the Vaikuntha Lokas, such so-called liberated persons again fall down into material existence. Srimad Bhagavatam 10.2.32. Therefore, no one can manufacture any system of religion without the principle of devotional service to the Lord. As we find in the 6th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, the initiator of religious principles is the Lord himself. In Bhagavad Gita, we find that the Lord condemns all forms of religion other than that which entails the process of surrendering unto the Supreme. Any system which leads one to the devotional service of the Lord and nothing else is actually religion or philosophy. In the 6th Canto, we find the following statements of Yamraj, the controller of all unfaithful living entities. The principles of religion are initiated by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and no one else, including the sages and demigods, can manufacture any such principles. Since even great sages and demigods are unauthorized to inaugurate such principles of religion, what to speak of others, the so-called mystics, demons, human beings, Vidyadharas, and Charanas living in the lower planets, 12 personalities, Brahma, Narada, Lord Shiva, Kumara, Kapila, Manu, Prahlada Maharaja, Janaka Maharaja, Bhisma, Bali, Sukadeva Goswami, and Yamraj are agents of the Lord authorized to speak and propagate the principles of religion. Srimad Bhagavatam, 6th Canto, Chapter 3, verses 19 through 21. The principles of religion are not open to any ordinary living entity. They are just to bring the human being onto the platform of morality. Non-violence, etc. are necessary for misguided persons, because unless one is moral and non-violent, one cannot understand the principles of religion. To understand what is actually religion is very difficult, even if one is situated in the principles of morality and non-violence. It is very confidential because as soon as one is conversant with the real principles of religion, he is at once liberated to the eternal life of bliss and knowledge. Therefore, one who is not situated in the principles of devotional service to the Lord should not pose himself as a religious leader of the innocent public. The Upanishad emphatically forbids this nonsense in the following mantra. Andam tama pravisante ye sambutim upasate tatoboya iva teptamo ya usambutyam rata. Upanishad 12. A person in ignorance of the principles of religion, who therefore does nothing in the matter of religion, is far better than a person who misguides others in the name of religion, without reference to the factual religious principles of devotional service. Such so-called leaders of religion are sure to be condemned by Brahma and other great authorities. Text 11. O my Lord, your devotees can see you through the ears by the process of bona fide hearing, and thus their hearts become cleansed, and you take your seat there. You are so merciful to your devotees that you manifest yourself in the particular eternal form of transcendence in which they always think of you. Purport. The statement here that the Lord manifests himself before the devotee in the form in which the devotee likes to worship him indicates that the Lord becomes subordinate to the desire of the devotee, so much so that he manifests his particular form as the devotee demands. This demand of the devotee is satisfied by the Lord because he is pliable in terms of the transcendental loving service of the devotee. He is also confirmed in Bhagavad Gita 4:11, Ye yathamam prapadyante tams tataiva bhajame aham. We should note, however, that the Lord is never the order supplier of the devotee. Here in this verse it is particularly mentioned, Tvam bhakti yoga paribhavita. This indicates the efficiency achieved through execution of matured devotional service, or prema, love of Godhead. This state of prema is achieved by the gradual process of development from faith to love. On faith one associates with bona fide devotees, and by such association one can become engaged in bona fide devotional service, which includes proper initiation and the execution of the primary devotional duties prescribed in the revealed scriptures. This is clearly indicated herein by the word srutekshita. The srutekshita path is to hear from bona fide devotees who are conversant with Vedic wisdom, free from mundane sentiment. By this bona fide hearing process, the neophyte devotee becomes cleansed of all material rubbish, and thus he becomes attached to one of the many transcendental forms of the Lord, as described in the Vedas. This attachment of the devotee to a particular form of the Lord is due to natural inclination. Each and every living entity is originally attached to a particular type of transcendental service, because he is eternally the servitor of the Lord. Lord Chaitanya says that the living entity is eternally a servitor of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna. Therefore, every living entity has a particular type of service relationship with with the Lord eternally. This particular attachment is invoked by practice of regulative devotional service to the Lord, and thus the devotee becomes attached to the eternal form of the Lord, exactly like one who is already eternally attached. This attachment for a particular form of the Lord is called Svarupa Siddhi. The Lord sits on the lotus heart of the devotee in the eternal form the pure devotee desires, and thus the Lord does not part from the devotee, as confirmed in the previous verse. The Lord, however, does not disclose himself to a casual or unauthentic worshipper to be exploited. This is confirmed in Bhagavad Gita 7.25. Nama prakasha sarvasya yogamaya samavrita. Rather, by yogamaya, the Lord remains concealed to the non-devotees, or casual devotees who are serving their sense gratification. The Lord is never visible to the pseudo-devotees who worship the demigods in charge of universal affairs. The conclusion is that the Lord cannot become the order supplier of a pseudo-devotee, but he is always prepared to respond to the desires of a pure, unconditioned devotee who is free from all tinges of material infection. Text 12. My Lord, you are not very much satisfied by the worship of the demigods, who arrange for your worship very pompously, with various paraphernalia, but who are full of material hankerings. You are situated in everyone's heart as the Supersoul, just to show your causeless mercy, and you are the eternal well-wisher, but you are unavailable for the non-devotee. Purport. The demigods in the celestial heavenly planets, who are appointed administrators of the material affairs, are also devotees of the Lord, but at the same time they have desires for material opulence and sense gratification. The Lord is so kind that he awards them all sorts of material happiness, more than they can desire, but he is not satisfied with them because they are not pure devotees. The Lord does not want any one of his innumerable sons, the living entities, to remain in the material world of threefold miseries, to perpetually suffer the material pangs of birth, death, old age, and disease. The demigods in the heavenly planets, and many devotees on this planet also, want to remain in the material world as devotees of the Lord and take advantage of material happiness. They do so at a risk of falling down to the lower status of existence, and this makes the Lord dissatisfied with them. Pure devotees are not desirous of any material enjoyment, nor are they averse to it. They completely dovetail their desires with the desires of the Lord, and perform nothing on their personal account. Arjuna is a good example. On his own sentiment, due to family affection, Arjuna did not want to fight, but finally, after hearing Srimad Bhagavad Gita, he agreed to fight in the interest of the Lord. Therefore, the Lord is very much satisfied with pure devotees, because they do not act for sense gratification, but only in terms of the Lord's desire. As Paramatma, or Supersoul, he is situated in everyone's heart, always giving everyone the chance of good counsel. Thus, everyone should take the opportunity and render transcendental loving service to him, wholly and solely. The non-devotees, however, are neither like the demigods nor like the pure devotees, but are averse to the transcendental relationship with the Lord. They have revolted against the Lord and must perpetually undergo the reactions of their own activities. Bhagavad Gita 4.11 states, Yeyathamam apadyante tams tataiva ajame aham. Although the Lord is equally kind to every living being, the living beings, for their own part, are able to please the Lord to either a greater or lesser extent. The demigods are called Shakama devotees, or devotees with material desires in mind, while the pure devotees are called Nishkama devotees, because they have no desires for their personal interests. The Shakama devotees are self-interested because they do not think of others, and therefore they are not able to satisfy the Lord perfectly, whereas the pure devotees take the missionary responsibility of turning non-devotees into devotees, and they are therefore able to satisfy the Lord more than the demigods. The Lord is unmindful of the non-devotees, although he is sitting within everyone's heart as well-wisher and supersoul. However, he also gives them the chance to receive his mercy through his pure devotees who are engaged in missionary activities. Sometimes the Lord himself descends for missionary activities, as he did in the form of Lord Chaitanya, but mostly he sends his bona fide representatives, and thus he shows his causeless mercy towards the non-devotees. The Lord is so satisfied with his pure devotees that he wants to give them the credit for missionary missionary success, although he could do the work personally. This is the sign of his satisfaction with his pure Niskama devotees compared to the Shakama devotees. By such transcendental activities, the Lord simultaneously becomes free from the change of partiality and exhibits his pleasure with the devotees. Now a question arises, if the Lord is sitting in the hearts of non-devotees, why are they not moved to become devotees? It may be answered that the stubborn non-devotees are like the barren land of alkaline field, where no agricultural activities can be successful. As part and parcel of the Lord, every individual living entity has a minute quantity of independence, and by misuse of this minute independence, the non-devotees commit offense after offense to both the Lord and his pure devotees engaged in missionary work. As a result of such acts, they become as barren as an alkaline field, where there is no strength to produce. Text 13. But the pious activities of the people, such as performance of Vedic rituals, charity, austere penances, and transcendental service, performed with a view to worship you and satisfy you by offering you the fruit of results, are also beneficial. Such acts of religion never go in vain. Purport. Absolute devotional service conducted in 9 different spiritual activities, hearing, chanting, remembering, worshipping, praying, etc., does not always appeal to people with a pompous nature. They are more attracted by the Vedic superficial rituals and other costly performances of social religious shows. But the process according to the Vedic injunctions is that the fruits of all pious activities should be offered to the Supreme Lord. In Bhagavad Gita 9:27, the Lord demands that whatever one may do in one's daily activities, such as worship, sacrifice, and offering charity, all the results should be offered to him only. This offering of the results of pious acts unto the Supreme Lord is a sign of devotional service to the Lord and is of permanent value, whereas enjoying the same results for oneself is only temporary. Anything done on account of the Lord is a permanent asset and accumulates in the form of unseen piety for gradual promotion to the unalloyed devotional service of the Lord. These undetected pious activities will one day result in full-fledged devotional service by the grace of the Supreme Lord. Therefore, any pious act done on account of the Supreme Lord is also recommended here for those who are not pure devotees. Text 14. Let me offer my obeisances unto the Supreme Transcendent, who is eternally distinguished by his internal potency. His indistinguishable impersonal feature is realized by intelligence for self-realization. I offer my obeisances unto him who by his pastimes enjoy the creation, maintenance, and dissolution of the cosmic manifestation. Purport. The Supreme Lord is eternally distinguished from the living entities by his internal potency, although he is also understood in his impersonal feature by self-realized intelligence. Devotees of the Lord, therefore, offer all respectful obeisances unto the impersonal feature of the Lord. The word rasa is significant herein. The rasa dance is performed by Lord Krishna in the company of the cowherd damsels at Vrindavana, and the personality of Godhead, Garbhodakasai Vishnu, is also engaged in rasa enjoyment with his external potency, by which he creates, maintains, and dissolves the entire material manifestation. Indirectly, Lord Brahma offers his respectful obeisances unto Lord Sri Krishna, who is factually ever engaged in rasa enjoyment with the gopis, as confirmed in the Gopala-tapani Upanishad in the following words: Paradante so buddhyata gopa veso me purusha purustad avirbabhuva. The distinction between the Lord and the living entity is definitely experienced when there is sufficient intelligence to understand his internal potency, as distinguished from the external potency, by which he makes possible the material manifestation. Text 15. Let me take shelter of the lotus feet of him whose incarnations, qualities, and activities are mysterious imitations of worldly affairs. One who invokes his transcendental names, even consciously, at the time he quits this life, is certainly washed immediately of the sins of many, many births, and attains him without fail. Purport. The activities of the incarnations of the Supreme Personality of Godhead are a kind of imitation of the activities going on in the material world. He is just like an actor on a stage. An actor imitates the activities of a king on stage, although actually he is not the king. Similarly, when the Lord incarnates, he imitates parts with which he has nothing to do. In Bhagavad Gita 4.14, it is said that the Lord has nothing to do with the activities in which he is supposedly engaged. Namam karmani limpante name karma phale spirha. The Lord is omnipotent. Simply by his will he can perform anything and everything. When the Lord appeared as Lord Krishna, he played the part of the son of Yasoda and Nanda, and he lifted the Govardhana hill. Although lifting a hill is not his concern, he can lift millions of Govardhana hills by his simple desire. He does not need to lift it with his hand, but he imitates the ordinary living entity by this lifting, and at the same time he exhibits his supernatural power. Thus his name is chanted as the lifter of Govardhana hill, or Sri Govardhanadari. Therefore his acts and his incarnations, and his partiality to the devotees are all imitations only. Just like the stage makeup of an expert dramatical player, his acts in that capacity, however, are all omnipotent, and the remembrance of such activities of the incarnations of the Supreme Personality of Godhead is as powerful as the Lord himself. Ajamila remembered the holy name of the Lord, Narayana, by merely calling the name of his son Narayana, and that gave him a complete opportunity to achieve the highest perfection of life.